Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Krewe of Japan podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a hot minute since we've had a travel episode, and it's been an even hotter minute since we've sat down and caught up with a friend of the podcast, Rob Dyer of The Real Japan. So we're going to knock two birds out with one stone. Today, we are so excited to sit back down with Rob and discuss travel destination that we all believe would be a fun place to visit, and not to mention Rob's Japanese home away from home, Hyogo Prefecture. In this episode, not only will you learn our thoughts and hear about our experiences in Hyogo, but being the travel expert that he is, Rob will share some of the great travel recommendations for exploring the prefecture itself. And if you have listened to past episodes with Rob, you know exactly the type of advice you're getting. Top tier. With his help once again, we will embark on a journey to Hyogo Prefecture to discover the sights and adventures it has to offer.
It's just the ruins of a castle. There's barely anything there. But its position is such, and the sort of geography and the climate around there is basically the clouds form below it. So you look at, so it's like a sea of clouds. And it really is like the, the Laputa, the Castle in the Sky, the Ghibli film, which is like that, where the clouds are there and then there's a castle floating above it.
What Hyogo delicacies there are to check out.
A very cool burger place in Kobe opened up about 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. I think it's called Wonto Burger, and it's Kobe beef, but in hamburger style.
And other essential tips and tricks that you must know before going.
A few years back, I did a bit more deliberate exploring around Himeji to sort of get a better feel for what it has to offer beyond the castle. And there is a fantastic temple complex, Buddhist temple complex on Mount Shosha, called Engyoji Temple. That's amazing.
So strap in and let's get started on our adventure into exploring the land of Kobe beef and Hanshin Tiger Mania, Hyogo Prefecture. Let's go. Here's what's going on with Japan Society New Orleans. Be sure to check the show notes for links and more information. Here we go. On Wednesday, August 21st at 6:30 p.m., come join us for a happy hour at Nola Brewing and Pizza Company. Whether you come to enjoy the pizza, the beer, or just good company, we look forward to seeing you there. Japan Society is also planning to bring back its monthly cultural programs, focusing on a variety of topics, starting with a discussion on Lafcadio Hearn. Date, time, and location are still TBD, but that's coming soon. For more information and details about these events and future events, follow us on the website and social media. Everything will be linked out in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Hey, are you new to the crew? Yokoso. We hope you enjoy this episode. If you like what you hear today, then you'll really love our back catalog of episodes from earlier this season and previous seasons. We've had some incredible guests, like YouTuber and comedian Dogen, helping us better understand Japanese pitch accent, Japanese Academy Award-winning director Eiji Uchida, unraveling the independent film scene in Japan, the man behind Mondo Mascots, Chris Carlier, exploring all the wacky mascots of Japan, and so much more. After you finish up this episode, hit that subscribe button or follow or whatever it is, and get notified when new episodes come out. Then while you wait for the new episode to drop, play catch up with the crew. But before you do any of that, let's dive into today's episode. All right, so today I have Jen with me. Hey Jen, how are you?
Hey!
We're recording this bright and early New Orleans time because we're talking with our friend located in Europe, Rob Dyer of The Real Japan. Hey Rob, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, guys. How are you? You both well?
Yeah, doing good. It's been a while.
It has.
Yeah.
Been
I think the last time we spoke with you was 2022. I had a call with you and Alan about travel restrictions in Japan. That ages
right.
us right there, huh? How long?
Yeah, because we both traveled during the restrictions. Yeah, that was a strange experience.
That is a dream from a long time ago that, does not exist anymore.
Yes, fingers crossed we never see it again.
Yes.
Oh, I know, right? I know. So what you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Working hard on the business, really. Circumstances, both business and private, kind of conspired to keep me from Japan last year. So it was the first time in, I don't know how long that I didn't visit, but I'm planning 2 to 3 months there later this year with my wife.
Great.
And we've got because last year was just like super busy. We had a sick cat that passed away and all this kind of stuff. So that kind of restricted my travels. My wife returned to Japan. But so this year we've got like lots of travel already lined up. We've already been to Germany. We got back from Germany about 2 weeks ago. We went to Berlin and Hamburg. we're both fans of Depeche Mode, so we went to see them on tour out there a few times.
Oh, nice.
And then we're going to return to Finland in about May, June time. And then we're looking for a break in Greece for a couple of weeks in the sun, get a bit of sun before we head back to Japan.
Oh, that sounds nice. Greece is in the fall or this?
Yeah. We go towards kind of about September time again because it's just too hot for us. Otherwise, it's a peak summer. It gets really hot out there.
I bet.
But I love, if there was another country that I was living in and it wasn't Japan, it would definitely be Greece. My wife and I both love it.
Every picture I've seen makes me want to go there. But yeah, one day. But that's not the travel we were going to talk about today. We were going to talk about, I think, a place you're pretty familiar with, if I'm not mistaken, Hyogo Prefecture. Our topic for today is traveling around and seeing what Hyogo Prefecture has to offer. And honestly, when we were discussing ideas for the season and which prefectures to highlight, and Hyogo came up, you were the first person that I thought of and Jen thought of. We both, we need to reach out to Rob because with everything that Hyogo has to offer, you know it the best. So we're going to start off real quick with just our quick impressions, and then we'll let you explain your relationship with Hyogo and why that area. So for me, I've traveled to Hyogo multiple times. Actually, it was 2 trips ago. We flew into Kobe Airport to go to Universal Studio Japan. So that was my little mini stop in Hyogo, and I went to Sannomiya Station, and we had some lunch around that area. That was the most recent, but I've been to some of the other sites there. It's a pretty hopping area, big cities in that area. And first thing I think of is Himeji Castle, but that's just me.
Yeah.
What about you, Jen?
Yeah, so Hyogo Prefecture is in the Kansai area of Japan, which is kind of like in the same realm as Kyoto, Osaka, Nara. The only issue I find travelers typically think of Hyogo for is Kobe, just Kobe alone, which is fine, but then it's almost like Kobe sabotaged itself because the only reason why people even think of going to Kobe is for Kobe beef, Wagyu, oh my God. But then you have all these restaurants in Osaka that are like, we offer Kobe beef. And it's like, oh my God. So it really deters people from going because I even had a friend that was like, why are we going to Kobe when we can get Kobe beef in Osaka? I'm like, no, don't be like that. Don't be that person. But it is such a great prefecture to travel to, especially if you're in the Kansai area. The golden route typically is Kyoto, Tokyo, and Osaka. So a lot of people just don't even think about putting Hyogo on that first itinerary. But I really feel like Hyogo is a great stop for a first itinerary, honestly, because it is so conveniently located near Kyoto and Osaka. So why not? Especially since it has so much diversity in its prefecture. Yes, Kobe is a very nice city, port city, very famous. But, there's so much going on in Hyogo that is not big city. It's mountainous or it's onsen resorts. It's really diverse. And so it's really worth a visit.
Yeah, you articulated that way better than I did.
Well, travel is my job, so
I'm gonna blame brain fog in the morning.
Yeah,
there you go. My coffee, I'm still in the first half of the cup, so give you some time through this episode. It'll start to, the moment of clarity will come.
Yeah, I'm running just on pure adrenaline.
All right, so Rob, what is your relationship with Hyogo Prefecture?
Well, my relationship, and that's a good word actually, is because my wife is from that area. She comes from a city called Ashiya, which is right on the coast.
I wanted to visit Ashiya.
It's a lovely city,
God,
actually.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Very nice.
It's such a cute place.
Yeah, it is. So my wife's family were from Ashiya, and we got married in the UK. And then a year later, on the same date, we got married in Kobe, Ikuta Jinja, the shrine in Kobe, which is, I think, the 3rd oldest shrine in Japan.
I think that's right. I think it's really close to being right.
Yeah, it's a lovely spot, actually. And again, it's sort of nestling in the heart of the city. It's got a small little kind of forested area around the back of it. Yeah, so it was my wife's family that first sort of brought me to that region. And so Kobe, Hyogo, but certainly Kobe itself, Kobe City, is kind of almost feels like a second home to me, to where I live in the UK, because I just spend so much time there. I mean, the real second home, I guess, is Ashiya City. But if I'm doing any kind of socializing or shopping or sightseeing, then I'll head down to Kobe because it's kind of it's got a lot to offer in a sort of very compact space, and it's like 5 minutes down the road. So yeah, so that's how I came to Hyogo Prefecture. And that kind of then bled, as Jennifer was saying, like into the sort of neighboring wider Kansai area. So that's a part of Japan that I know quite well.
I can totally relate to that. Like, obviously, we're talking about Hyogo, and I'm not going to go too much into Ibaraki, but like that's where my wife's family is located. And since we got married and we've traveled there so many times, like I started out just knowing their immediate area, but I've gotten to really expand out and like learn about it. So it's really funny and interesting how both of us have like kind of started in one little small town and then kind of like branched out and like got to really know the area from there. So I totally feel that.
Yeah, it is really well located. What you were saying, Jennifer, earlier about, people going down the Golden Route, basically they're 9 times out of 10, they're going through Kobe. If they're coming down on the Shinkansen, then they're going to go down to Himeji. They're going to be going through Shinkobe Station probably. And so they're often passing through it. And loads of people obviously take a base in Kyoto or Osaka, and it neighbours, Hyogo Prefecture neighbours both of those cities, their prefectures. So yeah, it's kind of like right on everybody's doorstep, but often overlooked. But Kobe as a city itself is wonderful.
For sure it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Jen mentioned the Golden Route earlier, and I think we've talked about that enough through just a variety of episodes over the course of the seasons that we've had. But as part of the Golden Route, as Jen mentioned, is Kyoto, Osaka. Is Nara officially part of the Golden Route? I feel like it is.
Nara
Not
is
really.
kind of like the same status that you're about to probably give Kobe, which is a day trip.
Yeah, I was about to say, is it kind
Travelers
of like the
and
same?
online people have really given Kobe the stamp of day trip, not really as a stay, which I'm still against. I think it's actually worth a stay, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the Golden Route for a lot of people, if it extends further down, will take them down to Hiroshima typically.
Right.
Some of the sort of enlightened ones who want to see the castle will stop at Himeji en route. But yeah, it goes down to kind of Hiroshima at the far end of the Golden Route. That's probably where it ends.
How long does the Golden Route, like, I guess, approximate your stay in the Kansai area as part of the Golden Route? If you're traveling it, obviously every itinerary is different. But if it's like your quote unquote standard, where people are kind of looking for like what is the recommendation if you get like, let's say a 10-day trip, how much of that would you spend in the Kansai area in general? Not just in Osaka or Kyoto, but just kind of the area. What do a lot of travel professionals recommend?
I don't, it all vary depending on what people's needs are. But
Sure.
if it's a 10-day trip, probably about a third of that time, maybe even a half, because it depends on how people travel. I think first timers typically kind of book accommodation in Osaka and Kyoto, and they're only 15 minutes apart on the Shinkansen. So you don't really need to stay in both cities. I mean, you can. They're very different, and there's reasons why you would, but you don't have to. But if you're building in sort of a typical itinerary of people sort of fly in and out of Tokyo and then they're traveling down, like the Golden Route, coming down through to Osaka and Kyoto and maybe further down to Hiroshima, they'll typically book accommodation and stays in both cities. So it'll usually be a few days each. And that's the kind of itineraries that I kind of see a lot of people that they ask me to vet, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, like you said, there's just so much. I mean, obviously Tokyo is huge and has its own allure and everything like that. But I feel like when you go to Kansai, it's not just like you're going to one big city. You got so many options there in that little kind of 1 hour circuit that you can kind of get from any of those places.
Exactly.
It's all like in that kind of centrally located for that piece of the trip. So I could imagine spending a chunk of your trip in that area.
Yeah, and Kansai is a terrific place to use anywhere in the Kansai area, like Osaka is a really good city, actually, but probably the best of all of the options there as a base for exploring that region, because there's a lot of diversity in the Kansai area and it's all pretty accessible by public transport as well, which is really great. So you've got all that diversity, as you say, within an hour and a half, probably, just to even get into the mountains, like quite remote areas, but they're well served by public transport. So it's a great place to use as a base. And if you've got limited time, then you can easily base yourself either in Kyoto or Osaka and explore Hyogo from both. I mean, if you wanted to base yourself in Hyogo itself, then Kobe is ideal. It's well connected and it's the capital with, good reason, really.
Sure. So we've mentioned Kansai and Hyogo, and I'm pretty sure anyone who's listening to this probably has a fairly good idea of where that is. But how would you describe the geographical positioning? It's kind of at the elbow, right, of Honshu, kind of right where it starts to turn, maybe not right at the point, but in that range. But where within Kansai is Hyogo located? It's kind of, is it central?
No, so the Hyogo is kind of, well, we sort of south.
I know, I'm trying to like picture the map and
yeah, it's southwest of Kansai, really. It's
Yeah.
kind of further. So you've got kind of, if people picture where, if they look on a map to see where Osaka is, then north of it, you've got Kyoto. Then immediately to the left of it, you've got Kobe. That then is really Hyogo Prefecture, because it's, as I say, Kyoto or Osaka, you're already next door to Hyogo because it shares a border with Kyoto to the northeast and Osaka to the southeast.
Okay. Got it.
So if people get their bearings, for Honshu heading down towards the, as you say, that bit where it pinches in the middle of the island and you get into the Kansai region, and Osaka, if they know where Osaka is, then just go a little bit kind of west and you're going to be there.
Yeah, and I feel like for well-prepared travelers who are trying to get off the beaten path, but like Hyogo Prefecture is the gateway to Shikoku.
Yeah.
If you go through a certain route, you go through Awaji to get there. So for travelers who are trying to, see the more diverse Japan and not go to the typical spots, Hyogo is that gateway to getting to those untypical spots.
Yeah, that's a good word, actually. Yeah, especially for that inlet, sort of inland sea, Seto Inland Sea area.
Definitely. What are some of the big cities? Obviously, Kobe. We've mentioned Kobe a bunch of times. Ashia, we've mentioned Ashia. But what are some big cities and hubs in Hyogo that people maybe aren't aware of? Or maybe that's not the first thing they think of?
The biggest one that's not been mentioned, well, outside of Kobe, is going to be Himeji. That's the biggest one. And the prefecture, it spans both sides of Japan, actually. It's one of the few. I think there's only one more that does this, but it's on the northern side, you've got the Sea of Japan area, and then you've got the Seto Inland Sea. So it's kind of like a vertical strip of a prefecture that spans right across the country. So you've got coastlines on either side of it. And on the north side, you've got Toyooka City area, but that's the biggest city on the northern side. On the south side, you've got Kobe is the largest. You've got Akashi on the way down that gets you to Awaji Island, which Jennifer just mentioned. And then the other major city is going to be Himeji. Beyond that, they're not really large. They're pretty compact, small cities. They're called cities. Not all of them are. There's only a handful of them. Nishinomiya is another one that's closer towards Osaka way. And then right on the border, to me, I always think of it as a suburb of Osaka, but it's actually in Hyogo Prefecture. The one right on the border is Amagasaki.
A friend of mine lived in Hyogo, and when I did my study abroad, way back when, I was traveling around that area, and I did not a homestay, but I stayed at his parents' house for about 3 or 4 days. And they were based out of, I believe it was Nishinomiya in that area. And we would kind of go here, there, and everywhere within the region. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Nishinomiya borders Ashia City, the one where my parents' family are from. So that's right on the border there.
Excellent. We've talked about the hubs, but what are some of the must-visit places when you think of Hyogo Prefecture, when you want to explore this prefecture within the region? You've already checked out Osaka, you've already checked out Kyoto, and you're like, okay, I got it, like Jen said, a day trip. What are some of the must-see spots that if you were in Hyogo Prefecture, you got to check out? I mean, I can think of one off the top of my head, and that's Himeji Castle. I've already mentioned that. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in a second. But
That's a good call. Yeah, I mean, obviously the starting point is Kobe. It's a harbour city, so it was one of the first cities to open up to outsiders. So it's got a very kind of cosmopolitan feel about it. That's what I like about it. It's a very attractive, walkable city. The main city centre is very kind of compact, and it goes down to the harbour district. There's also there's the Nada Sake area, because the water there is really good for making. It's really fine water for making sake.
Oh, okay.
So the Nada Brewery area is definitely a place to visit. That's just kind of a suburb of Kobe, really. But yeah, so Kobe is the number one. That's a lovely city. Then Himeji, we've already touched on, but I would say not only for the castle, which is stunning and it's a toss-up, but I think it probably is my favourite castle in the whole of Japan. It is magnificent.
Can I ask you why it's your favorite castle in Japan? I'm a huge castle nerd, so I really need to know your opinion.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, no, because it's one of only, I think it's only 3 or 5, maybe the original wooden ones still standing. Obviously, it's been renovated, but it's still one of the original constructions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you approach Himeji on the train, it's set in a plain right next to the coastline, and it's very flat, and the castle just stands out a mile from it. It stands out so high. It's just, you see it from miles away. I love it. And I'm a huge nerdy James Bond fan. And so when James Bond, You Only Live Twice, there's a lot of filming that's done in the grounds around the castle. So that's another reason why nerds like me want to visit it. So that's why
Nice.
it's kind of high on my list. But beyond the castle itself, there's a few years back, I did a bit more deliberate exploring around Himeji to sort of get a better feel for what it has to offer beyond the castle. And there is a fantastic temple complex, Buddhist temple complex on Mount Shosha, called Engyoji Temple. That's amazing. And that's also been used as locations for filming quite often. It's been used in a few Japanese productions, films and TV dramas. And it was also used quite extensively, actually, in the most recent G.I. Joe film, Snake Eyes, I think it's called.
Oh, really?
It's not a great film, but it's got a huge amount of location filming, actually. And if you're into kind of temples or Japan just generally, or that area in particular, it's a great watch because it's like really, really extensive filming in the temple complex. Himeji is a good one. Just behind Kobe are the Rokko Mountain Range. So Rokko Mountains, I would say definitely, if you want to get into the nature, it's really quick when you're in Kobe to get into the mountains from there, to take you up into the Rokko Mountains. There's lots of ropeways, cable cars and funiculars to get you to the various peaks there. And there's obviously some fantastic views when you're up there, back out over Kobe below, and then over in the distance you can see Osaka Bay. So Rokko Mountains is definitely one I would say. And then we touched on earlier the northern coastline on the Sea of Japan side. Kinosaki Onsen is a lovely, really beautiful hideaway full of picturesque ryokan, and it's got 7 public onsen bars that you can visit as well. And that's on the northern coastal boundary. And yeah, that's a place that I think we might touch on that a bit later, but that's a place definitely worth visiting. And then a better known version of that is kind of Arima Onsen, which is just a kind of local train ride north of Kobe. And that's a place where it's nestled in the mountains itself, where kind of a lot of luxury hotels sit close to kind of tiny family-run boutique shops specializing in local crafts and things like that. So that's quite a nice kind of blend. But that was, historically, that's always been, I think it's probably cited as probably Japan's oldest onsen, actually.
I was about to say that I think there's like 3, right? There's like 3 biggest or like oldest onsen. It's like that and Dogo, and then one other one I can't think of. But
Arima is always in amongst those. That's a good, and that's good for a day trip. You could, a lot of the hotels and onsen open up their sort of facilities to day spas, that kind of thing. So you can just pop in and use the facilities. You don't have to stay overnight. And then
you should stay overnight.
You're always with these places.
Yeah, because onsen towns, I feel, is just such a vibe. Like you want to be and live in that atmosphere. It's so just relaxing and beautiful. And a lot of people, when they try to like do their itineraries, I find this a lot when I'm trying to help people. They're like, oh, I want to see as much of Japan as possible. And they cram in so much. I'm like, do you really want to do that? Because like your feet are going to cry. Your back is going to cry. Like I think you're taking it a little too fast. And I feel like just shoving an onsen experience in there is going to help ease that panic.
Yeah, that's definitely not the way to do it. Yeah, I agree, Jennifer. Yeah, I mean, we're all guilty of that to a degree in the terms of, we always have limited time available to us. And obviously first timers really want to get as much as they can. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's good if you're going to do the ryokan and onsen. The ryokan is obviously the traditional inn, and they typically have the onsen natural hot springs as part of that experience. Yeah, you've got to do that overnight, and ideally somewhere in the mountains, somewhere very rural.
Yeah. Escape the city life, just get away for a little bit. And that's always I found if you can get to like either an onsen on the coast, kind of overlooking either some body of water, I find those the most serene. But then also in the mountains, if you can get into a mountain onsen. Yeah, it takes you to another place mentally and physically. I
think one of my most memorable, well, I've had it a few times, fortunately, but my most memorable experiences in Japan is staying in an onsen in deepest winter. So you're sat in a rotembaro in a pool outside, open to the elements, and it's snowing, but you're really warm. And the snow is just falling. I mean, there's nothing, there really is nothing better than that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Just one other place that I would give a shout out for. You touched on it earlier, Jennifer, was Awaji Island. So you can get the Akashi Bridge over to Awaji Island, which is kind of known for its onions and satsumas. But it's also got a really, my wife and I are big cat fans, but we found a beautiful little cute cat art museum there. So that's really worth seeking out. And kind of to contrast that, it's got a full-size Godzilla head, which a zip line goes into its mouth. Yeah, it's amazing. So, this tiny, seemingly sort of remote island has these kind of really strange contrasts.
Oh, Awaji Island is like just someone threw in a bunch of stuff in a bag and just shook it.
That's great.
Awaji Island's like that.
Yeah. When I was in Japan, fortunately, during the pandemic, I managed to get in. I was traveling around and I was doing kind of like a live update because I had a page of blog posts that I was updating kind of every other day sort of thing and posting videos. And I posted a load of pictures from Awaji looking back towards Osaka over Osaka Bay. And, it's beaches with palm trees. People who weren't that familiar with Japan just couldn't believe that was Japan. They just had never seen Japan like that. Big sandy beaches and palm trees. It was really strange to them. So, that's a great way to describe it, Jennifer. It is kind of like a mixture of all kinds of really contrasting sort of views and landscapes and experiences. Definitely one to add, and a lot of people would never know it. So, definitely one to look at.
So, Jennifer, what is your wish list of destinations in Hyogo Prefecture?
So definitely I want to give a shout out to Awaji Island as like an honorable mention because Doug, I don't know if you remember, but we have talked about Awaji Island in past episodes.
The first season. Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
And the Godzilla zipline came up. That's where I was like, oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah, with the episode with theme parks in Japan because it has like all the anime stuff going on. Like I said, it's a vibe over there. Also, what Rob was saying was the onsens, Kinosaki and Arima. I would love to go visit those two onsen areas, like especially Kinosaki. I've known about Kinosaki for a really long time and it looks so magical in all of, like the pictures and videos I've seen, and it's just a really hot destination for me. It's something that I really want to do one day. But something that we didn't touch on, and it's like out of left field, kind of wacky. It's like, what in the world is this? It kind of gives me vibes of like, I don't know, maybe like a Ghibli movie. Like it's just so surreal, which is Takeda Castle Ruins. It's like so eerie, but in a good way. It's like just these castle ruins on a mountain, but like it's all like most of the time clouded area. So it kind of like has this movie cinematic feel. And I'm a huge castle nerd, which, I think I brought this up on the episodes like several times to our listeners. That is something I really want to do as well in the Hyogo Prefecture area, is just visit those castle ruins, because if I want to visit castle ruins, it's these that I want to visit. So yeah, those are my destinations that I would like to visit, especially since I've already done Kobe. As much as it's really great, I love it. Port city, beautiful. I done it, so I want to expand out more.
Yeah, Takeda's also on my wife and I's list, Jennifer. In fact, there's a blog post. It's quite an old one, actually. We were going to go there one time, and it's, as you say, it's really difficult because if people don't know, it's kind of very high up, and it's just the ruins of a castle. There's barely anything there, but its position is such, and the sort of geography and the climate around there is basically the clouds form below it. So you look at, so it's like a sea of clouds, and it really is like the what is it? The Laputa, the Castle in the Sky, the Ghibli film.
Yeah.
Which is like that, where the clouds are there and then there's a castle floating above it. So that's why it draws a lot of people. And we were going to go there, and we had quite a tight itinerary at the time. We were traveling around sort of Hyogo area and neighboring prefectures. And that was on our list. And the day we got up, the day we wanted to go, we knew it wasn't going to be like we wanted it to be. It was, the cloud cover was complete. So we ended up doing a last minute change, but actually it was really good because we went to another castle, which I didn't know. We literally researching it the night before because we saw the weather forecast. And it's a place near Takayama called Bitju Matsuyama Castle. I don't know if you know that one, Jennifer. That's definitely one to seek out. Yeah, it's a good hike. You can get a taxi up there in like 20 minutes, and it's right on the coast actually, not far from Okayama, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
So we ended up going to there and discovering that castle instead. So there's always kind of an upside to these things. But yeah, so that's still on my list.
All right. Well, I had a castle on my list, and I've actually been there before, so it's weird that it's on my wish list. But every single time I've been there, like you had mentioned earlier, Himeji Castle is constantly under renovation or restoration, and there's scaffolding or tarps or whatever. So every time I've been, it's been just some kind of like, you couldn't really get a good picture of it or a good view of it. So I'm hoping one time, whenever I do make it down there next time, that it's not covered in tarps and scaffolding. That's my wish there.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm not a big baseball fan, but I know the Hanshin Tigers play in Nishinomiya, and I would love to go to a game. I've been to a Yomiuri Giants game in Tokyo Dome, and I've been outside the Hiroshima Carps Stadium. I didn't go to the game there. I kind of wish I had. You know, Hanshin Tigers, I know they just won the Japanese championship this year, or I guess was it last year?
Yeah.
But it would be nice to go to a game and experience that, because Japanese baseball is definitely different. And I've been to a couple games here, and baseball is fun in person, but I had more fun when I went to the Yomiuri Giants game way back when. So I feel like giving Hanshin Tigers would be a different change of pace. But all those other places you mentioned, like Kinosaki Onsen, obviously I would love to go there. Takeda sounds great. I didn't even know about that until you mentioned it. And maybe you mentioned it before, Jennifer.
I like the weird off the beat stuff.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I kind of want to add it onto my list.
But Doug, I will say a Hanshin Tigers game is super fun. I've been to one in Osaka when they were playing Oryx in like 2019.
Okay.
Which Oryx won. Sorry, Hanshin Tiger fans. But Hanshin Tigers is like a weird mashup team. I know an Osaka man, and he like claims the Hanshin Tigers, and I'm like, but they're from Hyogo Prefecture.
They're kind of like the big market team, though, right? They're
huge market for Hanshin Tigers. When you think of Japanese baseball, I'm sorry to your like Tokyo team, but like you think Hanshin Tigers, honestly. Yeah. The baseball games in Japan are just on another level. If you've never been, go at least once so you can experience it, because it is such a hype level of sports. Like there's so much to do audience wise. So if you get an opportunity to do a Hanshin Tigers game, whether that's in Osaka or in Hyogo Prefecture, you know, definitely give it a shot. But yeah, it's because the location is, like Rob said, on that border of like Hyogo and Osaka.
Yeah,
that's why I think
it's an odd location for the stadium, isn't it?
Yeah, the Osaka fans kind of claim Hanshin Tigers sometimes. I'm like, stop, there's
hands
a border.
Off. All the Hyogo Prefecture.
It's like the sports teams here in New Jersey and New York.
Yeah.
There's a definite draw, though. You're right, Jennifer, about the Hanshin Tigers. They kind of punch above their weight. I mean, for years they've had terrible kind of performances, but you know they're kind of suddenly recovered. But their marketing is everywhere. They're really kind of tied in with the local sort of companies and all that sort of stuff. The only time I've been to a baseball game was at Koshien Stadium to see the Hanshin Tigers, and they let the screamers go, the balloons go at the end of the game, and all this kind of stuff.
So fun.
It's really good fun.
Part.
And then one thing, if you do go to, I mean, it's a great place to go to see baseball in Japan. But one thing to look out for is when you walk into because it's the oldest ballpark in Japan. That was the first thing, and it was opened in 1924, and it had a capacity then of 55,000, and at its peak it could hold 80,000 fans. I mean, it's not as large as that today because obviously they're a bit more concerned about safety. It's a bit smaller. But Babe Ruth actually played an exhibition game at Koshien when he toured Japan in 1934. And outside the station, there's near the ticket office, there's a kind of bronze statue of him, which is a great photo opportunity. And you can sort of go and do the photo op without even going into the stadium. So that's one to look out for.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, a kind of legendary name like Babe Ruth has sort of played a game there.
Yeah. And there's one other thing. You mentioned Owaji Island earlier. I've actually been there, for any of the things. I had a friend's friend was a jet on Owaji Island. And we were on a road trip coming from like Kanazawa down through Kansai. And then we crossed over from Owaji Island onto Shikoku. But we stopped there. And another thing that we noticed when you're driving over the bridge, you see all these like Naruto whirlpools. And I know you can go on those like little boat rides where you can kind of see them swirling around in the water.
But you know what else is something that every destination has? Food. Everyone has food. And Hyogo Prefecture is also a food destination, I feel. The one thing that you think of when you think of traveling is, I'm traveling for food.
Yeah, especially Japan.
Yeah,
especially if you're in Hyogo, because you're going to be like, where's the Kobe beef? Where do I get the Kobe beef? Yeah. Everyone asks probably, where can I get, where's the best spot for it? Jen, have you had Kobe beef before?
I have. Okay. I don't remember what restaurant it was. It was like It was a very
Was
high.
it real Kobe beef, or was it just beef that was in Kobe that you ate?
No, it was definitely real. It was definitely real. The restaurant was like, that's all it served. It was very expensive, very fancy. Jonathan and I, my husband, we were celebrating our anniversary. So we're like, let's splurge and go to this place. It's like super famous, but like very expensive and like once in a lifetime opportunity. You need a reservation in order to go. And so we did that. And it was like, I usually don't eat steak. I hate steak. In America, I do not eat steak, but I will eat steak in Japan. Kobe beef. It was great. I have no complaints about it. It was literally, I know like this is so stereotypical, but like, and people like say it all the time in like their YouTube videos and whatever, but like it literally does melt in your mouth. Japanese beef is just on a different level.
I'm hungry.
Yeah,
I can't
agree.
be talking too much about steak at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I mean, we will. But oh my God, now I'm like, steak for breakfast. I don't have any though.
Yeah, I feel like the hype is real, but I feel like Japan has a lot of beef to offer, and every prefecture is like, my beef is the best, and my beef is the best. And that's totally like, I love competition. Competition just makes everything better. But Kobe beef just does have that reputation because when you think of Japanese beef, the number one thing everyone talks about is Kobe beef. So it just kind of falls into like being the hype of Japanese beef. It maybe isn't the best beef in Japan. I have no idea. I haven't eaten all of them. But I feel like it's still good and it's still worth the price tag at least once. I will say that. At least once. I don't think it's something that you have to do at every Japan trip.
But you could.
I mean, you could. You could. If you love it that much and you have the money, you could.
Yeah,
but
it's a treat. It's not cheap. I mean, there's all kinds of grades of it because it's the marbling, isn't it? It's how much fat.
Yes,
but the
exactly.
A5 Wagyu is the one that is kind of like the main one to go for. And I agree, Jennifer. You know, if you're going to go somewhere, you're going to have it in Kobe, aren't you? I mean, you could be anywhere in Japan, but you know, go to Kobe, have it. And also, we talked about Rokko Mountains. There are pastures up there where the cattle graze. That's where the beef comes from, in those mountains. And you can visit farms up there. So it's definitely worth doing. But one tip for the listeners is if you wanted to try it and not sort of break the bank, two tips really, I guess. There's a very cool burger place in Kobe, opened up about 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. I think it's called Wonto Burger. And it's Kobe beef, but in hamburger style. So it's kind of small patties. So the size is relatively not they're not huge anyway, steaks of Wagyu, but it's in a burger style, and you know, so you can literally try it like that. So that's one way to do it. And another tip is any of the sort of Kobe beef restaurants in Kobe itself, in Kobe City. Typically, you can have exactly the same menu or a kind of slightly trimmed down version of the dinner menu at lunchtime, and the servings, you know, the beef that they serve you, if it's A5 Wagyu, for example. It's going to be the same thing in the evening or the daytime, but if you go at lunchtime, it's going to be cheaper. It's just because it's just the daytime. They just want the custom. Although these places do tend to fill up, and they do, you know, it's a good idea to reserve in advance. But yeah, those are a couple of good tips. But then if you really want to kind of pull out all the stops and do what Jennifer was saying, you know, the kind of all guns blazing, kind of really expensive, basically. But for a performance show, you can go to the Kobe Steakhouse restaurant. There's a hotel in the Harborland area of Kobe called the Oriental Kobe. It looks like a big white teardrop. It's kind of like lovely looking hotel. And they have a couple of restaurants in there, but the Kobe Steakhouse restaurant in there is one where, you know, you kind of sit at the counter and the entire counter is a griddle. So the chef makes it right in front of you and it all kind of, the flames go up and all this kind of stuff. It's spectacular to look at. But it is expensive, but it is well worth it. It is just fantastic.
It's worth the experience and the food.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Or you can be like me and just take a table that's really close to it and observe, but not pay that price tag.
Yeah, I just want a sandwich tonight, actually.
I don't know. I need the flames scorching my face.
Singe your eyebrows.
Yeah, singe my eyebrows.
Yeah. Then you know you've really done the experience.
Right.
But Rob, since you are our Hyogo Prefecture guru, what other unique foods or delicacies are famous in the area?
Well, I think we touched on it earlier in terms of drinks as well. I would just to go to the drink side of things.
Oh, okay.
Is sake, definitely, because of the quality of the water there. The Nada Brewery District, mentioned earlier. That's on the kind of east side of Kobe near the Osaka Bay waterfront. That's definitely worth checking out. And there's actually a really interesting museum there where you can sample the different sakes and obviously buy the bottles. But a number of the breweries that are in that neighborhood also do kind of samplings and tastings where you can go in. So that I would say. But in terms of Kobe as the heart of Hyogo, the thing about Kobe, because it was one of those cities that opened up first to foreign influences, it was also the first place where coffee came into Japan. So it's really good for cafes and coffee shops and that kind of stuff. So if, like me, you've got a bit of I don't have a sweet tooth, but I do love stopping in cafes and having a cake and a coffee. I do it ridiculously to the extent in Japan, more than any other country, actually. You'd think it'd be like Paris or something like that. But no. When I'm in Japan and when I'm in Kobe, we just go to coffee and cake every day if I can do it. I
second that.
Good. That's not just, I don't feel so bad then. But yeah, also in some of those coffee shops, they do these fantastic fluffy cloud pancakes that are kind of like 4 or 5 inches thick. They're absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, definitely. When you're in Kobe, the cafes and the coffee shops have got to be visited.
Oh, man, we're talking about pancakes now. I love the fluffy pancakes.
They're great, aren't they? They're just so light. They're amazing.
Oh, they're so good.
And then the coffee, there's a place called Nishimura, which is like a coffee brand out there. And that was founded in Kobe. And Japan's first coffee shop was opened by Nishimura in Kobe, and it's still operating, actually. So that's definitely one to visit.
Oh, cool. So you can get a little coffee and a little bit of history at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're in Kobe's got, I think it's one of the top 3 size largest Chinatowns. It's not actually huge by international standards, but it's a good Chinatown right in the heart of the city. And whenever I'm kind of strolling around the city during the day, I don't worry about lunch. I tend to just gravitate towards Chinatown, and I typically grab like a couple of pork buns or something like that in Chinatown. So that's a good tip.
All right.
That is a good tip.
So are there any other like unique or famous delicacies outside of the Kobe area that you can think of?
No, I don't think so. I mean, unless you can think of any, Jennifer.
No, not on top of my head. Pretty much what you've said is pretty on point. It's just pretty much the Kobe beef, and it is very famous for cafes. So, and then I'm not a drinker, so I didn't know about the sake thing, but I'm not surprised.
I noted that down. Is not
I'm sure you did.
There's a few sort of Japanese craft beer in recent years has really kind of
started to boom, right?
Yeah. And there's Osaka's Minnow beer, which is quite well known, but there are others. I mentioned earlier that some of the sake breweries open themselves up for tastings, but the small breweries do as well. And there's a few tours that you can do to some of those, which is worth looking out. And Japan's got great izakayas everywhere, like the little kind of tiny little bars that serve food and beer kind of thing. But Kobe has some really good traditional izakayas, especially beneath the train tracks between Sannomiya Station and Motomachi Station.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I don't know how high it is, but there's a covered area. And if you go underneath the train tracks, there's some great traditional izakayas there. That's a really good place to kind of hang out. Yeah. And then if you wanted to do like a see how they rear the beef, the cows are reared. It's in a place called Tamba, I think, which is sort of in the north. It's right in the heart of the mountainside of Hyogo Prefecture, and there's a place called Takami Beef Farm, which is where they kind of rear the cows. That's something that people might want to kind of check out as well.
Okay, cool. So we've talked a lot about everything you do in Hyogo and throughout Hyogo, but let's talk a little bit about getting there, because I think we mentioned that there's a lot of accessibility when you're in Hyogo to get around from, the big cities to the rural countrysides and everything in between. But what if you're traveling to Hyogo? We mentioned that Shinkansen is very prevalent, obviously, since it's on the Golden Route, you can kind of get through there. But if you were, let's say, flying into Kansai, you would fly into, I'm assuming, Kansai International. But Kobe also does have an airport, correct?
Yeah. That serves kind of like the local
regional
area.
Hub, kind of.
Yeah, so like people from South Korea would typically fly into Kobe, for example.
Okay, gotcha. So you arrive in Kansai International Airport. How would you get to, let's say, Kobe from there? Is there like a bus, a shuttle, or like do you need to take a train or Shinkansen, or is it something else?
Yeah, there's a couple of options. You could get a train into Osaka and then transfer from Osaka to Kobe to get like a local train.
Okay.
But also there's what they call them limousine buses that go from the airport directly to Kobe. That's definitely doable. Or you can hire a taxi outside. You can get one that just sort of wave one down, or a good company that works well with sort of international travelers and i.e. has a good English website is MK Taxi.
Okay.
And my wife and I use those all the time when we're in Japan. And typically when we go to Kansai International, we will pre-book an MK Taxi to pick us up at the airport. But you can. There are taxi ranks outside, and it's like all things in Japan. It's all metered. You're not going to get ripped off. So if you didn't pre-book and you just wandered out and got a cab, you're going to do that. You're not going to get ripped off. It's all going to be legit and so on. But it's going to take you about an hour, I guess, to get to Kobe. Maybe an hour and a half, depends how you do it. But yeah, there's a few routes. Actually, when you go there, there's a kind of, because obviously, but people may not know, but Kansai International is built on a man-made island. And to get there, they've built this kind of literally multi-layered bridge to get there. And it's like, at one point, I think it's 6 different levels. It's an amazing piece of architecture, like engineering. And so to get there and back, either by train or by car, you're going to be traveling over that bridge that connects the airport to the mainland.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
So yeah, it's very, obviously, they put the airport in the bay, so they obviously had to make sure it was really well connected. And the Shinkansen, if you're coming down, we talked about the Golden Route earlier, about people traveling down towards Kyoto or Osaka on their way to Hiroshima, typically. The Shinkansen runs the length of the Seto Inland Sea coastline, which is where, the kind of southern half of Hyogo Prefecture sits. And there's a bunch of local trains. There's Hanshin and Hankyu services as well. Mm-hmm. And so the local trains and buses will get you deeper into the region, like north into the region. If you want to do that, then Kobe is probably the ideal place to be as a base to explore those other areas by more like the local services, trains and buses.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, I was going to say, because I know they have JR East if you're in Tokyo, and I'm way more familiar with that. So I'm not as familiar with the train lines and everything. So I was going to ask about that. But that's great to know. And I highly recommend buses too, in terms of if you are going a little bit further distance. Sometimes they have, you said it stretches pretty much the whole width of Honshu from Seto Inland Sea to Sea of Japan. How long does it take to get from one side to the other if you're in a car?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That would be quite a few hours because it's mountainous. There's no easy route. The quickest route, if you get the train from Kyoto to Kinosaki Onsen, which is right on the Sea of Japan coastline, that's going to be a couple of hours by local train. You can't get a fast train. There's no express trains on that line.
Gotcha.
So that's at least a couple of hours from Kyoto. So if you was to go from one side to the other by car, you're going to be probably looking at, I would guess.
If you're going to Kinosaki Onsen, would you recommend from, let's say, Kobe?
Just do train. Just do train.
Okay.
Yeah. Because to get there from Kobe, I think from Kobe you'd probably have to go to Kyoto and then get a branch line out from Kyoto through to Kinosaki Onsen.
Good to know. So maybe Kyoto can be a day trip from Kobe.
yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the
way you think about it, right?
Stick that on the advertising. It's funny actually because I've got a blog post on my site, a really popular one. It's called "How to Spend a Week in Kansai," and then in brackets, and not visit Kyoto. Because I'm always trying to encourage people to do the bit, So yeah, I'm all in.
Rob, you stirring the pot. Like I said in the beginning, Hyogo is a very easy prefecture to add to your itinerary. I mean, it's so close. I know every time I go to Osaka, literally just a hop, skip, and a jump away to Kobe. Right. So it's the easiest day trip if you really wanted to do a day trip. But if you're in the Kansai area, why not?
Yeah, I mean, even just a local train, not talking about bullet trains, but even just a local train from Osaka to Kobe is like 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, it's so easy.
It's short, yeah.
And they're like every 5 minutes or more. It's like so frequent. And you've got 3 train lines as well. You've got the JR, you've got the Hanshin and the Hankyu. And the JR is the one that, because it kind of dominates Japan, it's got all the kind of sweet spots in all the major city centres. So if you want to go to like Sannomiya, for example, the JR's there, but there's a Hanshin and a Hankyu just like a few hundred yards down the road, So any of those 3 train lines is going to get you there as well really easily.
Excellent. So do you have any other travel advice for visitors going to Hyogo? Anything we haven't touched on yet? I'm trying to think of anything specific that I wanted to ask, but I think you hit on a lot of the questions I had.
No, the only one that I was thinking of was, but we've already touched on it really, is not to overlook the fact that Awaji Island is part of Hyogo Prefecture.
I think a lot of people forget that or don't realize.
They think it was part of Shikoku because it
Right.
sits in that area.
Right.
But yeah, and if you look at it on a map, you've got Hyogo, which is the kind of the slab of land north to south. But then, for some reason, Awaji Island is part of it, even though it sits in that little bay. So yeah, that's the only one I would say. Don't forget to look out for that.
Awesome.
And look at those palm trees lined beaches. Do a photo up there and stick that on Instagram and challenge people to guess which country you're in. They'll never get
it.
Exactly.
Get that social engagement up.
Make your friends envious.
All right. Well, I think that kind of brings us to the end of our Hyogo exploration conversation. But we want to ask you, before we wrap everything up, do you have any upcoming projects or give you an opportunity to share where people can find out more of your work or things you have going on? The floor is yours.
Yeah, no. I mean, as always, just you can find me at therealjapan.com and, look for that on the various social media channels. I have recently, towards the end of last year, I've launched a new range of interactive Google city guides, and I've started with Hiroshima. The idea basically it's got everything in a Google map that you need to plan and book a trip. And what I'm doing with these is they're going to be include unlimited lifetime updates, so it's always going to have the latest information.
Oh, cool.
So if people want to check that out, they can go to japancitymaps.com to learn more. And coincidentally, actually, I'm thinking of Kobe as possibly my second map. Give that a bit of a shout out and to raise its profile a bit.
All right.
Because I love the city and a lot of people overlook it. So I'm thinking if I created a Google map around that, maybe that will encourage people. So yeah, that's on my radar.
For sure.
And then I've got 3 new ebooks in various stages of development at the moment. I've got my most popular book is called How to Travel in Japan When You Don't Speak Japanese, unsurprisingly. But I'm doing a complete rewrite of it, a huge of it. It's going to basically be a different book, but it's going to be on the same topic, but it's going to be much more in depth. And It's based on a lot of the feedback that I've got from the previous editions, because that's already on its second or third edition. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to also do a guide to onsen in Japan and kind of relaxing and kind of wellness, that kind of stuff, which is something that my wife and I are kind of quite into.
Okay.
And then I might also actually do a guide to Super Nintendo World at USJ, Universal Studios Japan, because that's really popular. And sort of Donkey Kong Country opens in a few months' time.
Oh, so I didn't know that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
what?
Yeah, it opens spring 2024. It's exciting.
It's amazing. I saw when they were building it, but I had no idea. I was looking at it up recently, doing some research for the book, and it's adding something like 30% to the size of the park. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. So
are they using new land or are they repurposing?
Yeah, new land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah,
I know they closed down the Spider-Man ride, and I didn't know if they were repurposing some areas that they were like.
Yeah, that was a real shame. That was one of my favourites. I love the Spider-Man and the Terminator ride as well. The one where the guy on the motorbike comes on the stage and everything. That was fantastic.
Those are kind of your USJ, or not just USJ, but like even classic. Here, the staples.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer.
But so there's a lot's happening in Universal Studios Japan. So there's a lot to write about there, and then. Yep. I've also got a major development with The Real Japan, which I can't yet reveal, but I'll give you a little sort of teaser heads up, give you guys exclusive preview sort of thing. It's all about the community aspect of The Real Japan that I've always, because for me, traveling has always been a great way to meet new people and make new contacts and that kind of stuff. And I've organised meetups in Japan before, Real Japan meetups, where each year we choose a different city and we just have a meetup, like have a meal and a drink, and people just meet and locals come and tourists on holiday who are traveling in Japan that happen to be there at the right time. So that's something I want to restart because obviously they stopped because of the pandemic. So I'm going to restart those hopefully later this year. And so there's a bit, but I'm going to look to expand the community aspect of The Real Japan. So that's something I'm working on at the moment and investing in. So that's going to be launched later this year.
Cool.
Wow,
well, we'll have to keep in the loop. And I'm not sure exactly when this episode will air just yet. So as we get closer to it, we'll check back in and see, if you have any updates. If you want to add anything in, I can add links in the show notes. I'm more than happy to share it. And I've noticed you've been doing a lot more video content too, like interviews and conversations with folks too. So if you have anything you want to share later on or you want us to share, let us know too. And we can happy to put that out there for you.
Yeah, love to. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and I know Jen loves Kansai.
I love the travel episodes, especially Kansai, like Kansai areas, like my home. So, love this. This was great for the books.
Yeah. And if we ever do an onsen episode, which we've never done, and we have no idea how to approach it. But
nope, I know how to approach it. Well,
I was about to say,
cool.
Now that we know that Rob's writing a book on onsen and relaxation in Japan, maybe we, in the future, we collaborate again.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Love to.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again so much. This is a lot of fun, and we will definitely keep in touch. And hopefully I know our listeners are going to take a lot away from this, especially some of the tips that you gave and things.
A lot of detail.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as always, with anything that I do, I just want to make sure there's practical stuff, real, practical tips that people can pick up, or, a bit of information, then go and do that extra bit of research. And then, now they've got something which is much more personal, get some much deeper, much richer experiences in their travel. That's what we're after.
Excellent.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Great to see you guys. Thanks again.
Great to see you too.
Bye.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the Krewe of Japan podcast. And a special thank you, as always, we'd like to say thank you to our guest. A special thank you to Rob Dyer of The Real Japan for joining us as our guide on this audio journey through Hyogo Prefecture. Between ziplining into Godzilla's mouth on Awaji Island and exploring the mysterious Takeda Castle ruins, we hope you have plenty of new ideas to add on to your next Japan travel itinerary. I know I have a bunch, although after recording this episode, I realized I've actually done the Naruto Whirlpool boat rides by Awaji Island. And I actually have pictures. I'll post them on social media as proof. So I guess I could scratch that off my bucket list. But was this your first episode hearing what Rob has to say about traveling Japan? Check out our back catalog of episodes from season 2 and 3 to hear more about Rob's thoughts on off-the-beaten-path Kansai travel, as well as his experiences traveling to Japan during COVID lockdown season. But don't stop there. Check out his website and social media for some other incredible sources of information about traveling around Japan. We'll link everything out in the show notes. What destinations are on your Hyogo travel wish list? Share with us on Instagram, Facebook, X/Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, YouTube at Krewe of Japan Podcast. That's KREWEOFJAPANPODCAST. While you're there, give us a comment, follow, like, retweet, share, whatever floats your boat. Let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. Or perhaps you prefer to provide your feedback in a more private setting. Send us an email at kreweofjapanpodcast@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you guys. Speaking of feedback, if you are enjoying what you're listening to right now, whether it's a travel episode or past episodes this season or previous seasons, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and or review on your favorite podcast streaming app. Only takes a second. Every single one of those 5-star ratings and reviews helps others interested in Japan and this kind of content find the podcast. Or hey, just let a friend know about us. I'm 100% sincere when I say that any and all support is so incredibly appreciated. But that's it for today. Until next time. Looking to start your own podcast and don't know what platform to use? Tell me about it. When we started the Krewe of Japan podcast, we tried a bunch of the big name recording platforms, but always came back to the one we're still currently using to this day, Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. In addition to its high audio and video quality for podcast production, Zencastr provides a full suite of production tools to record, produce, and publish studio quality content from the comfort of your home. Just log in through your browser and start recording. It's that simple. For us, we simply send out links to our guests and they join the lobby. But before you know it, it's all done and you have your studio quality audio and up to 4K video right there ready for you, right when you finish. The best part is having their multi-layered backups to ensure that your recordings are in the highest quality, regardless of anyone's internet connection stability. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcasts in one place and distribute to all the major destinations. It's really that easy. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's your time to share your story.